Hey everybody! In today's video I wanted to talk about why the price of Balisongs matter, and to do that I thought I would just start out with the cheapest options, talk about those, and then move my way up to the most expensive thing that I have. So to represent this, I've got a few different Balisongs that are at 3 different price points. And to start off, we're going to start out with the cheapest. This here is the first trainer I ever got. It's what I started on, and it is going to represent the essentially like the $50 and less, but it's basically just the cheap Amazon trainers. That is what is being represented by this, because this is a cheap Amazon trainer. Now, if you're someone who's new to the hobby and you get one of these, immediately you're not going to realize why it's bad. But there's a few bad things about the design of this that become obvious as you get more skilled at flipping and as you try better Balisongs. First thing is that this came with a latch, which I removed. The latch is not removable, so in order to remove it you have to either use a saw and cut it off, or what I did was I broke it off. On top of that, it originally came with these really cool scales inserted here that looked like galaxies, and I also removed those because this is entirely made out of stainless steel. And for those of you who have been in the community for a while will know that a fully stainless steel Balisong is bad because it's very heavy. This thing I believe is like 5 ounces currently, and it originally was like 5.6, which is so heavy. Most people would probably not flip anything that's more than 4.8 ounces, and this is about like 5, like I said. Of course, with that, it's also extremely handle bias, which does make stuff like rollovers and chaplains pretty easy. I mean, it just hugs your finger, as you can see. But it's also going to make a lot of stuff way harder, like trying to fan. And in general, it seems that the community is moving towards a preference towards neutral Balisongs, as neutral Balisongs just do everything fairly well instead of being good at one thing. But there's a few other problems, particularly with this one, that you'll also find at the lower price point. So at a much lower price point as this, occasionally you will see Balisongs that don't even have screws in the pivots. For instance, this one has pins. And now if you're brand new, you might be thinking, well, hey, pins would be pretty good because then I don't have to worry about adjusting my Balisong and getting it tuned perfectly. But the problem with pins is that most likely when you first get your Balisong, the pivots are either going to be perfect or they'll be too tight. Now either way, it doesn't matter, because as you flip it and as you move the handles, these pins and this whole area is going to get looser. So the pivots are going to get looser as you flip it, which isn't great because, as we've already said, there's no way for you to adjust them. So basically they'll just get loose and you'll just have a loose Balisong with tap and just really bad tolerances. Here's the play currently. Also, mine has developed, I believe it's on this handle, some blade rub, which, as you can see, is preventing, in some cases, the blade from coming out of the safe handle. Of course, as you can see, it's still flippable. You can still flip these cheap Amazon trainers and do tricks on them. But the biggest reason I wanted to make this video isn't to say that, yeah, you can flip on these. It's that, sure, you can flip on these, But there's a reason that people spend more money on higher stuff. So, moving on from the cheap Amazon stuff, we'll move on to our mid-range. I've got two different Balisongs that are both at what I would consider a mid-price range. Or I think what most people would. These are still, I would say, on the cheaper end of Balisongs, but it seems that every day companies are coming out with more and more options between the $50 and $150 range. But the first thing that we have is going to be the Balisong Volp. Immediately, you'll notice some differences. One thing you'll notice is the size of the Volp is much bigger, and that's another thing to consider because a lot of cheap Amazon trainers are actually smaller than a regular Balisong. A standard Balisong is roughly 9 to 10 inches, usually around 10, and the Volp is standard full-sized, versus this is a little bit smaller. Now, compared to some things you can find, this isn't too bad. This one is like 9.5 inches, which is only a little small compared to the normal 10. So it's by all means, it's still flippable. Doesn't feel too small in the hands. One thing you will notice is how thin the handles are. This is about a normal thickness for a handle. This is, at best, I would say 3/4 of that. At worst, it's about half in some places, because these actually get wider as they get towards the back. So there's that. The next thing is that we now have screws, so we're now able to adjust our Balisong, which is a plus, because non-adjustable Balisongs are just not good, as I've said. The next place where you'll notice an immediate upgrade is in the materials that the Balisong is made out of. The Volp, and in general stuff at this price range, you're now going to be able to have aluminum as your handle material versus completely stainless steel. And aluminum is generally the preferred handle material, at least until you get up to the few hundreds of dollars where it's going to switch to titanium. So that is a nice plus. You're able to get nice annotations. Hardened steel blade, high quality materials. Now, of course, I do believe this aluminum, I don't think it's the best aluminum you can get, but it's better than nothing, so it has that going for it. Of course, with them upgraded materials, you're also going to see that it's going to have a much higher durability, because higher quality materials means more durable materials, which is good, especially because if you're someone who's new to the hobby, you will drop your Balisong a lot. Even on simple things like basic opens, you'll probably end up dropping it, because that's just the nature of it. As you get better, you'll drop your Balisong less, and you're able to do harder tricks. But when you first start, you'll be dropping it a lot, so it's very good to have something that you know isn't going to break if you drop it on concrete. Another Balisong that I have to help represent this price point is going to be the Glider Bermuda. So here is the Glider Bermuda, and the reason I have the Glider Bermuda is to give an example. This is in the mid-range price, but it has G10, and the thing with G10, as anyone who's been in the hobby will know, G10 can either feel really good or really bad. And in the case of my Glider Bermuda, for the most part, it usually tends to feel really bad. And what we mean by that is that cheap G10 can often feel chalky and dry. And for me a lot, that's what my glider Bermuda feels like. Now, of course, you can actually oil your G10 and help get it some moisture in it, and that will make it feel a lot better. And I think a lot of people don't actually do that, which is why they have so many issues with G10. But if you do that, you will see a noticeable difference in how it feels in your hand and the amount of grip it provides. Personally, it's not really something I've done, except for today. I had just moisturized my hands and I picked it up, and I think some of my moisturizer got rubbed off on the handles, because today they actually feel quite nice. But it's still a gamble, because I'm not going to say that, oh, because it happens to feel good today, since my hands were moisturized when I picked it up, that makes it good. The G10 feels absolutely horrible 90% of the time. And generally, if you have really bad G10, well, you're not going to want to flip it, so you're not going to be picking it up. And in general, you're going to want you want to have Balisongs that inspire you to flip. You don't want things that make you not want to pick them up and not use them. So that is the thing to consider with cheap G10. In terms of the glider Bermuda versus like the Vulp, you still have basically the same concepts of, it's well built, it's good construction, they're nice designs, they're not made by clones, which is something that you'll often see at the cheap Amazon level, is a lot of Chinese companies that basically just clone other Balisongs. I launched that right into the ground. Thankfully it's not muddy over here like it is over there, so we're gonna stay over here. But basically, a lot of the cheap Balisong companies will basically steal the designs of other more well-known companies, at least in some aspects, and then they'll sell that. Sometimes it won't be a complete copy, maybe they just use the same handle design or the same blade, or sometimes they like tweak it slightly so it's not an exact clone, but it's pretty obvious what they did. Versus in the mid-price range, you're not really going to see that as much, and this kind of mid-price range is where you're actually starting to be able to buy from reputable companies, such as Balisong, who has really made a name for themselves recently since launching the Vulp and the Morse, and recently the Lightning, or their newest product, which I don't remember the name of. They might have not announced it yet, but Balisong has definitely been making a name for themselves. And of course, Glider, a very well-known Balisong company based in Australia. Now, of course, clones are kind of an intellectual gray area, as it's like, it's intellectual theft of a design. So some people are okay with it, some people are not. I personally don't really support it, because the thing you need to understand about clones is well, first off, they're usually worse quality than the actual things because they're cheaper. That's why a lot of people buy them. It's because they're cheaper and they don't have enough money to, say, buy a Kraken, which is almost $300 at this point for some of them. But they can spend maybe $100 or $50 on a Kraken clone, and they're getting a similar product that looks about the same. So why does it matter? Well, it matters because, for one, it's not going to be as good. It just isn't. It won't feel as good in your hands. It's not going to flip as good. And on top of that, you don't have the amazing quality guarantee that you do with a company like Squid. If you buy a Balisong from Squid and it comes with a big problem, you can just contact them and they will fix it for you. And I will guarantee that. But if you buy a clone and it comes with a big problem, that's just, you're out of luck. There's not anything you can do about it unless you're able to fix it yourself. But a lot of people that buy clones are new to the hobby and don't have the skills to do that kind of thing. And also, clones will generally have worse tolerances than compared with something that's not a clone. For instance, my glider Bermuda has perfect tolerances. There is no tap and there is no play. I mean, that's incredible. But with clones, you don't really get that same guarantee. But also, another thing to consider is if every person in the Balisong community decided that from now on they would only buy clones because they're cheaper, well, what would happen is eventually there would be no more clones. And I know that seems weird to think if everyone buys clones, there will be no clones. But the reason for that is because all of the companies that they like to make clones of, like Squid Industries, will all go out of business. Because if everyone stops buying their products, well, they'll just simply not make any money and they'll be forced to stop making Balisongs. So then you wouldn't see any more clones. They'd have to make their own designs. And that's just... While clones are bad, I think it's significantly worse to have all of the major companies go out of business. And then all we're left with are cheap Chinese products. So there's that to consider. But that's enough rambling about clones and about the mid-price range. We will now talk about the higher end price range, which I have represented by my Squid Industries Nautilus. Now, both of these Balisongs, the Glider Bermuda and the Squid Industries Nautilus, are G10 scales. But I can tell you from first-hand experience that they feel completely different. So the Squid Industries Nautilus, out of the box, the G10 feels soft, it feels fluffy, it just feels really comfortable in your hands, compared to the Glider Bermuda, which is chalky and dry. I should actually say, out of the box, the Glider Bermuda came covered in oil that I had to like wipe off, and even then it was like still there. And it wasn't, from what I could tell, it wasn't even an oil that was meant for the G10. It was just oil from the pivots that had gotten everywhere. But that's not, I don't want that to be a big judge of it, since obviously once that oil is gone, you don't have that issue anymore. But I don't know what was up with that. But that might just be me personally. I don't want to say that that's how they all came, but that was just mine personally. But the Squid Industries Nautilus has G10 that comes feeling amazing out of the box. And that is a big thing that you will see with the difference between the mid-range Balisongs and the higher-end Balisongs, is that higher-end Balisongs will feel better, if not perfect, out of the box. And when I say perfect, I don't mean that they're going to flip perfect, because there's no such thing as a perfect Balisong that will feel perfect to you. But what I mean is, there will be no issues with these that you can find out of the box. They will just have perfect tolerances, and they'll feel great. They'll be machined well. You can't find any defects in them unless you're buying a blemished model, which is different. They're just going to be really high quality, and you can immediately tell that as soon as you start to flip them. It's a hard thing to explain, but just the difference in quality between like the Nautilus and the Vulp, you can just feel it in the flipping, which I know is kind of hard to convey over camera, but if you were to hold these and flip them, you would just be able to tell that there is a drastic difference in price between the two of these. I should also mention that something like the Nautilus, as I said, it comes with perfect tolerances out of the box. That means the bushings were tuned perfectly, and it has held that tune since the day I got it, even after various drops, including several drops onto concrete and tile. And with zippy end caps, it's also allowed me to keep it in pretty much perfect condition despite drops onto concrete and tile, as opposed to something that's cheaper, which will definitely get scuffed up very easily if you drop it, which is why this also has zippy end caps, because I flipped this one quite a bit and I don't want it to get destroyed because I dropped it once onto concrete. Versus something like the Nautilus, which if you drop it onto concrete even without end caps, it'll survive and probably take minor damage. Of course, it's still not good to throw your knives at your balisongs at concrete or anything like that, but they're going to hold up much better than, say, cheaper stuff. And what I was trying to get at with the tolerances is that the Vulp, while my Vulp currently does have perfect tolerances with no tap and very little play, it did not come like that out of the box. In fact, as far as I know, pretty much no Vulp will, and almost nothing at this price point will. It'll come out of the box with a good tune and a good setup, but it won't be perfect as it is with higher end stuff from Squid Industries. So in order to get it to the level of something like this, if you're even able to at all, is you have to do that work yourself. Now the Vulp makes this quite easy by not only giving you pretty much all the tools you'll need for maintenance, it also gives you an extra set of bushings for the balisong, so that if you mess up tuning it, you're not completely ruining the balisong. But with something like a Nautilus, you don't really have to worry about that because you know it's going to be perfect out of the box. That is what you're getting when you spend all of that money on it. You know that it's going to feel great, flip great, and be great. You're not going to have to do any work on it. All that you got to do is oil it from time to time, and then you'll be great to do all your flipping. That's generally what you're paying for when it comes to the different price levels of balisongs, is that you're paying for the quality of materials, the quality of the construction, and you're also paying for the guarantee that it's going to be good, and that if something is bad about it, you'll get it fixed. Whether that's a refund, a new product, you ship it back to them, they fix it and send it back. You know that in some way it has that like warranty on it, despite not actually having a warranty. You just know that if something's wrong with it, it will get fixed. And that's truly a great feeling, especially when you consider how much money you're putting into these. That is basically the difference in the price points of balisongs, and why spending more on a balisong actually matters and can be a great investment for you, especially if you want to take your flipping seriously. While I'm not trying to say that you have to, by all means, of course, as I demonstrated even in this video, you can still do flipping on cheap trainers off of Amazon. It's just a lot more work and effort on the part of you as a flipper. And if you're a beginner, well, it's good to have something that you know is good and that's going to hold up for a long time, instead of something like this, which is something you're going to grow out of, almost like a crib. It'll kind of get the job done for a while, but then at some point you just have to upgrade and get a bed. Or in our case, just get a better flipper, because this isn't going to last you forever. Versus something like the Nautilus, which will last you forever. But that was pretty much all I got time for today, guys. Hope you've all had a great day, and I hope that you all keep flipping.